Hello, hello all. all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marnie Stockman. This is Bits and Books with MSP Media Network. And this month we read Deliberate Discomfort by Jason B.A. Van Camp. And I'm going to have everybody else introduce themselves. And I have a question for them. I'll start with Scott. I'm going to go around the horn on what's on my screen. Scott, when you hear deliberate discomfort, would you say you lean into discomfort, or did reading the book maybe make you think differently about that?
Oh, the book very
Oh,
much.
introduce
Yeah.
yourself
Oh,
first.
hi.
Sorry.
Scott Levy, CEO and founder of Result Maps. We
Thank you.
make software that helps. Do I give the whole spiel or just?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the whole spiel is we help business owners, CEOs, and leaders maximize the value in their business, get operations to a point where they got total control and can hit their goals, whether that's selling the company, getting to a new level of revenue, or just taking themselves out of the business. We do it with software and services. Boom. There's my thing.
Boom. Now,
Um,
deliberate discomfort.
I'm like you have my brain in this. So I was always into discomfort before, but I took it to a new level after I read the book. So full disclosure for everybody, I read it before this go round. I've read it. I've read it twice. I joined the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge. I knew about the book because I had met Jason, but I read these types of books maniacally, my wife would probably say. And this was one of the best I'd ever read. So have done the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, which is its own special brand of fun, and also have done the leadership course that goes with it. And this really does, like, from doing it so much, I check myself now whenever I'm like pulling away from something. I say, is that just uncomfortable? Am I just uncomfortable? Should I just dive in and do it? What's actually happening here? So it's really, I feel like it's impacted me for sure. Because I
Yeah,
would I would I would dive into stuff that was comfortably uncomfortable,
yeah,
but wouldn't always get into the just hardcore discomfort as
yeah.
much.
I think that's excellent. Super glad to have you on this call. Tim, would you say you lean into discomfort or do you steer away?
That's a really great question.
Oh,
First,
introduce yourself first.
let me introduce myself.
Yes.
Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard, where we help MSPs uncomplicate compliance and make it simplified for you and your customers around the compliance function. All right. That was uncomfortable. Or maybe it was.
I
That's a
always
good
think because you
radio
like
voice,
stuff.
man.
Yeah.
No, so it's interesting, right? Having been in the military, having lived discomfort and lived sort of uncomfortable things throughout a vast majority of my life, I like to think I try to embrace it where possible, and even more so, like learn from it. Right? It's only through some of these discomforts, some of these failures, some of these uncomfortable things that, at least me personally, how I can grow, how I can get better, how I can identify, or how people can help me identify areas that I need to grow in. So I think I like to say I lean into it.
Yeah.
Probably not as best as I should, but I think I like to lean into it.
Excellent. Well, as Scott said, thanks for your service and for anybody listening who has served also. Thank you. Chris, I'll say it first. Introduce yourself and then tell me how you feel about some deliberate discomfort.
There's some advantages to going last. You get to,
Yeah.
hi, Chris Dix, former founder of ChatStyle.ai, where we develop chat software solutions for MSPs, both internal and external. Now, after the acquisition, director of conversational interfaces for Cloud Radio, where I'm doing the exact same thing. I would have to say for a long time, I did not probably lean into uh, discomforting situations. I don't want to say I actively avoided them, but I got it. I think for a long period of time there, I'd gotten into a sort of a comfort zone and just, sat there and then last few years that's changed with trying to, to find a different path forward, something that was not easy, but uh, not to compare it to the experiences of the people in the book, which I was not in the military, but that was a really and some of the stories in the book even were discomfort deliberate discomfort
Well,
to
then they did their
experience
job,
them.
right? That's
Yeah,
what he said at the
yeah,
beginning. If you feel
yeah.
uncomfortable reading this, we've done our job.
Yeah. So, but yeah, now I've tried in the last few years to more actively seek out and at least not seek out, but not turn away from, let's say, situations where uh, the challenge could produce something positive.
You made me think that one time I got a performance review and my boss said, I wish everyone dealt with conflict the way you do. And I called my mom and told her this. And to be clear, this was 10 years ago. So I was 40 something. I still called my mom to tell her that. I wasn't 12. And she burst out laughing. She's like, yeah, this is how you deal with conflict. You refuse to have it. So you like go after it. And I thought, oh, I always thought I kind of avoided it. But I have learned that I really just like it off the table. So I'm a really anti-drama mama, as I tell my children. And so I like it off the table right away. What I don't like is the discomfort of not knowing. So I would rather go deal with the situation. But I think that took a while to get there. I have definitely learned if it is going to be drama and I think that the person is the cause of the drama and not me or the situation that we're in, that is the discomfort I will lean away from. Like, I do not feel like having this battle because I think the person needs to do some work, but I can work on that too. So as usual, I've got some pages and parts in the book that I want to talk about. And we can all chit chat about all of it. But this first one, in the very beginning, in the introduction, they talk about the warrior model, the total warrior model. So for folks that haven't read it, Jason he was a lot of things, but he was a Green Beret that was sent in to a new command. And I will absolutely get all of the military language wrong. So please forgive me for that. But he went to Major Pettit, who was a bigwig commander, because he was about to lead a new group. And the advice that he got from Major Pettit was to go ask he sent them to go listen to all of these folks. And so the book is a military person giving their story about how they leaned into deliberate discomfort and the leadership principles that they learned in the course of that story. And then is sort of a scientific overview of what that looked like. And so at the very beginning, in the introduction, he talks about this total warrior model, which is about finding ways to learn and grow continuously, mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, and professionally, which I quite like. I talk about having a personal board of advisors of like folks that kind of coach you in these different areas. And in the MSP space, there are a lot of small companies where the leader, the CEO, is the sole owner of the company, or often leadership, even if they have a larger company, leadership is often, I feel like, siloed, so that while you're working on getting your team support in all of those areas, maybe the leaders themselves are missing out on that. So what are some things that you all do as CEOs to ensure that you're in fact getting that support? Do peer groups work? Do conferences work? And this is why I'm going to jump to Tim, because I know you just did a podcast on conferences. Are they worth it? So I'm going to send it to you and ask, as a leader, how do you ensure you're supported in those ways?
Oh gosh, that's a really great question. And we kind of took one out of your playbook, Marnie, where we have an advisor council, right? We have people as an advisory board for us as the leaders in the company, not just myself, but my co-founder, Maureen, as well, to come alongside us and encourage us, guide us, beat us up with the accountability bat when we need it, right? And so, so that's been really beneficial for us as a company, right? Having that advisor council, having our own sort of quote unquote peer group as a sounding board. Personally, I think I said this on one of our previous books and bits a while back. I don't do that well enough for myself. I don't have my own like peer. I have friends, obviously, but we don't do that on a regular basis. I need to get better at that. I do find that, having that support, whether it's, an advisor council or, somebody that can have a third party objective review of what's going on as a sounding board is extremely valuable,
Yeah.
right? As we struggle with stuff or as we win stuff or as we kind of play the line, and, that encouragement is great. That accountability is even better.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the real trick, isn't it?
Right? The accountability is even better. And even the discomfort and uncomfortable conversations like we just had last night with our advisor council. We do that kind of on a weekly basis. But it does challenge us to strive to be better, to get better, and having somebody that's outside of the normal sphere and have that looking in, it has been extremely valuable to us.
Chris, Scott, got anything on that?
Yeah, no,
Chris,
I'm
go ahead.
trying to, I'm sorry, do a better job of getting that kind of feedback as well, trying to seek out people who will, be honest with you about these things, supportive but honest, that combination of feedback is, you can't beat it really. So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a non-negotiable. Like it's how I met Marnie. So she knows this about me. I'm aggressive about it. Like I've always benefited from mentors and coaches. And at some point I realized everybody I admired was also that way. And not just that way, everybody I admired was actually methodical about it. Like they just got out there, and it's great for the discomfort part, but it's also amazing the relationships you get and just the raw learning. Like
Yeah.
there's a little bit of, and I think this is one of the messages of this idea of discomfort. Even if the discomfort seems big, it's usually less than what we fear. It's less than what our brains make it. And the upside is usually such that you're like, why didn't I just do this before?
Yeah, you're kicking yourself.
Yeah. And I think the advisory boards, mentors, or friends that have been there and done that, there's such massive upside from it. It's one of the best things ever.
I think so. You mentioned the scary part of it, right? You can't be brave if you aren't a little scared to start, right? Like you're not doing anything brave if you haven't taken a risk. So start with that. It's funny because we literally today, it's, the NFL draft time. So in my other world, we just drafted our own personal board of advisors, or in Ted Lasso language, our diamond dogs. We drafted it from Ted Lasso characters, but it was interesting. We actually took on Chat GPT, which I think is a funny, you'll have to check that out elsewhere. So I loved, it's on page 26 if anybody's flipping through and wants to take a look. There was a whole section on training and trusting. As a matter of fact, I made somebody read it, and then they went and bought the book just based off of reading pages 26 and 27. So I think if Jason needs any commentary on where you just start delivering value, I think that is a big place. But it is talking about the training brain versus the trusting brain. So the training brain is the one that the mindset allows individuals to bring skill in. So that's and they talked about in the United States, we're very accustomed to the training brain, right? And then the trusting brain mindset allows performers to let skill out through freedom, focus, and fun in the moment. And then I want to read just the bullet points. I could read those 2 pages, but I'm not going to. So trust sets you free to be at your best. Leaders are the banks of trust. I like that a lot. Leaders are the banks of trust. Humans are more important than hardware. Oh my goodness, I say that all the time. Think back to our Adam Grant conversation. We're in a character revolution, right? In the land of automation. It's the humanness that's going to make you stand out. Trust is a contract with terms. Trust requires accountability the right way, which, Tim, that's, you kind of just mentioned that, right? Like if the right kind of accountable requires trust. when trust is broken, it takes a while to build that back. And then trust is earned and given with belief. So all of that about trust, what sticks out to you, Scott? I'm going to jump to you. What sticks out to you about trust from what Jason had to say?
So much. I'm thinking of like all the different things.
I know there are 10 bullet
I
points
think,
and we could talk about each of them.
but I think this theme just kept coming up for me is how much when you get this, I know this because I know Jason and I know some other officers from the special forces. There is such a humility, um, and such a what is the right word? It's like there's a focus on you, what you're saying, who you are. You can ask the dumbest question on planet Earth and you'll get an answer like you're a general. There is something very much to how leadership is approached where you're not here to tell people what to do, you're here to serve them. And when I think about trust, it's like everything is so that you're creating that trust. You're building that trust, you're making deposits in that bank and
Yeah.
making sure that you don't betray that. That's the thing that comes up for me the most.
Yeah.
It's not the charismatic leader model. It's much more, I have a job to do and I'm going to take it very seriously and do my level best to be the
Yeah.
best leader I can be.
Yeah, the servant leadership model. I worked for one person who was a very strong leader and really well researched all the time. And you could trust that even if you didn't agree with the approach they were going to take,
Mm-hmm.
that it was well researched and that person really did believe that it was the right answer, right? At no point did you think there was a political agenda or some personal component to go with it. Again, you might disagree with the final outcome, but it was much easier to do the work, even if it wasn't the route you wanted to take, because you trusted that they did the work. And they'd also built a relationship, right, where you knew, kind of believed in them a bit. Chris, you and I had talked before about the flow bit. So the training, trusting piece, the balance of those two, the training mindset versus the trust mindset, can help get you into a state of flow. Like when you read about the flow component, what came to mind for you?
Well, it's just, that's something I think about a lot. It's something I am really interested in, the idea of getting into that mindset, into that the flow, the zone, um, and trying to find ways to do it. Um, I find that with the work I do, it's easy to be distracted, and distractions can, come in a lot of different forms. It can be, just a knock on the door, or it could be something in the back of your mind. It could be that you didn't prepare, or that you're tired, and just anything that I can do to get in the zone and be as effective as I can be in the task I'm doing is uh, it's just something I think about a lot. And so when they dealt with that in the book and about how I think they said that the more you reflect and affirm on your values, the greater control you have over your responses. And so that's something I've thought about a lot lately. That different stresses come for different in your life. There's always going to be stress. But knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you, to know that that can help you manage those responses and therefore get in, the flow and avoid those distractions. Um, that was a big takeaway for me for that, and also the fact that it mentioned that getting into the flow also burns a lot of energy, and that you need that balance and recharge. You can't always be,
Yeah.
in the flow.
Yeah, you
You
can't
need
flow all the time. Yeah.
exactly much as you want to. Much as I disdain sleep at this point, I still, it's you got to have a balance. You got to have a recharge.
Yeah. I don't live far from the Naval Academy, so I've certainly always heard a lot of the work that goes into, becoming a cadet, et cetera. And you hear about boot camp and SEAL training, right? And there are certainly movies out there that don't do it justice, I'm sure. But one thing that I didn't realize in the training of like why the sleep deprivation? Why do you always hear about sleep deprivation in boot camp, and why are they running with logs over their head for a ridiculous amount of time, etc. And it was what you said, that when all those stressors come up, first muscle memory kicks in, and then second, the real you comes out. So they've got to kind of beat you down to where you're just complete exhaustion, so that you do learn about you, who you are. And I know Scott firmly believes in this one with me on the that, like, the core values, knowing who you are is critically important, because if you define that, the culture that plays out in work is the behaviors that your core values drive, right? And you may say we want one thing to be our culture, but if your core value doesn't drive action that looks like that, it's not going to land right in the culture. So that, you made me think of that when you're like, yeah, to get into the flow, you got to have the muscle memory, you have to have done the work, you have to do the practice. And at some point you have to know, your body has to be trained that when in a stressful situation, it will respond as the authentic version of you that you're hoping gets to the right outcome. Scott, I saw some head nods on the core value piece. Got anything to add on that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just got done with a talk on core values, and it just comes up over and over. Like, people, I think, it gets laden with all the marketing stuff, like kind of aspirational core values. But when you can stop and think about what's a behavior and what's an example, and how can I create a behavior that's recognizable and high-fiveable, now you've got a core value. Now you're actually driving a behavior. And then for yourself as well, like, there's a piece, I think, that comes with knowing that this was a difficult, uncomfortable situation, but I'm comfortable with the decision I made because I was aligned with my values.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the clash you feel with yourself or with somebody you're sparring with, or with work. If that alignment isn't there. Tim, how about you? Setting up a new company always lets you think about core values, is that?
It does. And I tried to steal one from Life Cycle around the get shit done, but that got totally. Anyways, as we started
You
to build
didn't
out,
hire a GSD specialist? We certainly did.
I actually wanted that as a core value, and it kind of got shot down because, marketing and messaging. So, but, building out a company, we had an opportunity to kind of really take an inward look at who we are at our core, right? And as Scott kind of pointed out, that whole marketing fluff around it, like, I didn't want the marketing ease or the fluff to like shine through, and we landed on, and me, I live in the acronym world. We landed on ACTS: accountability, care, trust, and service, or servitude, right? People don't get service or servitude, same kind of thing. And it really kind of defines who we are in our daily lives. We're accountable to each other. We're accountable to our partners. We're accountable to our staff, right? We talked about trust a few minutes ago, right? And if you can't trust us, it's
you are a compliance.
You can't trust right? So, but the care thing is something that I kind of really honed in on, and I borrowed a piece of the phrase from a good friend of ours, and that phrase is, "We will care for you like we would care for our mom," right? And so that, anyways, and then obviously service means service and being able to help others and give back to veterans and do the servitude. But those things are really the driving force of how we're building our culture. You can talk to any one of our staff members, any one of our consultants, any one of the people that we work with in our team, and they'll say that that's how we operate, right?
Yeah.
The number of
helps
times
get to the flow, right? I'm like, that is,
right.
If that is the way you're doing the work, the saying, time flies when you're having fun, right? And fun actually happens when you're working in flow, which means it's aligned to your core values. So I think that's how it all ties together. the other piece of the flow, this was around page 69. It was sort of, if you're happy, you've got the flow, you need three things. It was clear goals, immediate and appropriate feedback. And I love this because I think this one's important. The balance of your current skill set and challenge for where you want to be next. You know, like you can't get in the, you can't stay in the flow of like assembly line. If your core value is growth and you're aiming to do more, right? You're not challenging yourself by doing the same thing over and over. So it's that balance between what's helping you grow and push. Chris, you look like that resonates with you.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts about it, and that was one of the things that was a change for me in the last few years in terms of confronting discomfort. Was I had reached a point in my career where I was the skill versus challenge balance was off.
Yeah.
Not the amount of work I was doing. I had a huge
Sure, it's
pile of
very
work in
easy to be
front of me.
busy.
Yes, busy but not challenged, and
Yeah.
so I needed to make a change for that to do that, and that made me, that reading that part of the book also made me understand, you know, when it's talked about the core values, how important that is, but also, I think we've talked about this on dealing with the other books, and I think Kyle's mentioned it before, but the why, like why are these your core values? Like, you
Yeah.
know, what, not just what are they, but why are they? And
Yeah.
so, thinking about that, uh, wow, yeah, just it was a really eye-opening part of the book for me.
It is interesting how, I mean, I've got core values written in our book where like they've got a list of core values. And I think a lot of people, we've mentioned fluff a couple times, like, oh, I'm going to do a fluffy core value activity because I'm looking at a list that says things like cheerfulness on it, right? Like this is in the military book, right? I'm reading their core value list, but to actually do the work, because really the first time you read it, you're like, yeah, I think I'll do all of those things, right? But it's 2 pages of things along the way. But when you start circling the ones that feel like you, and then Chris, to your point, digging into the why they feel like you, and then Tim, how it plays out, right? In terms of the work and what turns into your work culture, it is really important. I get LinkedIn pings all of the time from people who are feeling stuck at their work, and they'll ask if I'll hop on a call just to give them advice, although I more spend the time listening because they've got the answer. But it usually comes down to digging into their core values and what they want to be and why it's not matching what they're currently doing. So yeah, I think that's a big piece of the book. He gave a lot of stories. Well, other people told a lot of stories in here. As Scott said, he kind of, it was an interesting format. And Scott, you said you took the course on it and that the people that are interviewed in the book actually.
Yeah, they interview
You want to
them.
talk about that? Because I think people that like the book may be really intrigued by what the deliberate discomfort challenge is and what the course
Yeah,
is.
so the challenge itself. So I had met Jason and ended up serving as head coach up until this last month for his nonprofit. And he offered everybody that was involved in the nonprofit, hey, you can be in our challenge. They have this challenge. It's, I don't know, it's like $200 or something. But it's a deliberate discomfort challenge, and it's got all the different domains. It's got a mental, spiritual, all the things they talk about here, physical,
Yep.
and you keep to, and then it's got a professional. So on the one hand, like and you're reading a book every week, a book per week.
Okay.
And you do a gratitude practice every day. You do these prescribed workouts every day, 2 workouts a day. But the thing about the workouts, it's more about managing the time. Like you self-regulate how much you're taking on, but managing the time was a big thing. And then alongside this, you get the professional development. You can take the course. I was taking this when I was working at a particular or with a particular client where I was doing basically some fractional leadership work for them. And it was really interesting to do it while I was watching the transformation this customer's going through, and see how, even though I was familiar with these concepts and think of myself as someone that really knows them, that going through this and putting myself through the discipline of taking the notes I showed, I can't remember if everybody was on the call yet or not, but how frequently these very, very simple ideas come up in day to day as a
Yeah.
leader, and how many times where younger Scott might have dismissed it as like, oh, this person needs to do X, Y, or Z. Just why don't they just go do it? As much more presence and paying attention to them and thinking about how I wanted to show up as a leader and what I could do to help them. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, everybody says that, but I was way more engaged that way. And then you see the response. Because I think I'm somebody, I like to get in and get things done, one of those GSD people. But stopping and allowing others to get things done and allowing them to go through the learning curve and make the mistake in places where I think I might not have, because there was something as you were talking about, I think the flow chapter that I wrote down is self-awareness is a moral imperative.
Mm,
I was like, that, I like that.
yeah, that's strong.
And so it's the thing that really got me about all these things is the stories are dramatic. The principles are so simple.
Yep.
They're
Yes.
deceptively simple.
That's-
You have to like get yourself to lean into them because they're so simple, they're easy to dismiss. And I think for me, going through that training and really putting myself through the discomfort of like, I took notes on every section to make sure I didn't, oh, I've had this before. You know, it was so easy to have that response. And yeah, I saw a massive, massive upside. And I mean, I ended up with a leadership notebook, right? Which is one of the things that got recommended.
Yeah.
Things where I was like, I don't need to do that. I do other things. And the effect that it had on me as an individual, how I showed up at work and everywhere else, it was noticeable. It was very, very noticeable.
You said something that reminded me as I was reading it. I thought it's fascinating that the same principles that can guide me day to day in work or life is what these folks were doing in very insane, if you ask me, scenarios, right? But the same processes have to be in place, right? Like when the guy was upside down in the water, like for 40 minutes, it just like, what a crazy high stress situation. I'm a firm believer you're never given anything you can't handle. So clearly I'm not as tough as those folks because I can't imagine being in those situations. But it is interesting that you could easily, because the story is so extreme, that you could miss the simple message. And I like how Jason had he had the scientific explanation of the principles that were happening, like knock, knock, in case you weren't paying attention, while people were getting shot up in that previous story. This is what was happening so that you could see how this plays out in your business world, where the likelihood of, a grenade going off is reduced, hopefully, to zero. It was really something.
I like looking to that domain because it cuts all of the BS out.
Yeah.
There's no room for BS.
And you can stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah, that too. Oh man, that was the other thing about the book. Like I was like a couple of times choked up, but it cuts through all the leadership fluff on the one hand, but anything that's left, this matters.
Yeah.
Because there's no room for error.
Yeah. Yeah. That again reminds me of the story when, in training camp, boot camp, whatever, where they're all holding the logs and the one guy was really starting to they say you just are broken down mentally. And then something made him look up. Right. And it was when they connected with others and looked outside himself, that was able to understand like the hints of what servant leadership must be about, if we can all lift each other up.
Exactly. Having been one of those guys with the thing holding above my head, having lived through some of that, the camaraderie that's there, right? All the way back to that advisor council, right? Being able to, have a group of individuals, moving towards a common goal and being able to lean on them in those times of my brain instantly goes to lean on me, right? Being able to lean on them
The
and being
teacher in me loves that movie.
right, just has that like, I'm not alone here, right? Like, yeah, I'm, we're all carrying our own weight. We all did or did not eat breakfast. We all got up at the, like that whole camaraderie thing, right? Is just key to being able to make sure that, as business owners, even as IT techs, right? As the us, level 1, 2, and 3 technicians in the grind every day, and this is kind of where COVID really messed some of that up, because everybody's now disjointed. You're not sitting around in your little cubicle, having a laugh. Like, I think we need to get back to that, right? Because discomfort alone and being deliberate around that, it's not a good thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need the team.
it's just not. And so, being able to have your tribe, being able to have your core people around you can be really, really rewarding, really uplifting, and really helpful, right?
Yeah.
But living in discomfort by yourself, not a good thing.
Hard.
It makes me think of my favorite, or the story that had the biggest impact on me. And I say that because it comes to my mind all the time from the book was, I forget the individual's name, but he's done heroic things and he struggles with alcoholism when he
Yeah.
gets back. And he goes in front of a judge who says, I'm going to have to put you in jail,
Yeah.
which was tough because this guy had been, underwater
He
in
was
a
trapped
Humvee
underwater,
or
yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
like being in a
He
closed
was
space was a big deal.
claustrophobic, yeah.
And like, right after they put him in, the gate opens and the judge comes and spends the night with him.
Yeah.
It's like, I still like have to be careful how I tell it because I'll choke up.
I
like,
know. It's like, that's a way to say
powerful.
that story without tearing up. Yeah.
Yeah. But that idea that we do not have to go through things alone,
Yeah.
and that it's such a core part of who we are as humans.
Yeah.
And again, that these guys, and I don't want to monopolize this, but I'll tell one more story. So I got to meet General Stanley McChrystal, who Jason was at the top of the chain of command in the Iraq buildup, and has a great book called Team of Teams that everybody should check out as well. I was blown away at how he interacted with folks, asking him all manner of questions where you're like, why did you ask that question? Like kind of, like really not, almost borderline inappropriate questions, but he talked to each person with a humility, like that was the most important person in the world. Appreciate your service. Like he meant it. Like you could see he believed it with the core of his being. It was very humbling because when I'm watching him do this and I'm checking myself, I'm like, do I do that with everyone? Because I know the answer.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable, but it's no. But the way everyone approaches it is so much more human than you might expect, I guess. And that's the other thing that always impresses me about this community and that book.
Yeah. When you say that, I taught, and there were absolutely, by seventh period, sometimes I would say, okay, folks, I wake up every morning with the patience of the saints, but this morning, second period blew it for you. So I am like done with some shenanigans. And so I know like I don't have a lot of patience. So let's tread lightly, try to get it together, because I can't ask you if you can turn it back off and back on again 1,000 times without losing my mind. And having built enough, I put enough trust in the leadership bank, I feel like, that seventh period every now and then would be like, we're with you, Miss Stockman, we're manning up. You're not going to have to throw any of us out today, which I really didn't do, but it did make me think of that. Like, yeah, no, there are days when I definitely did not have the patience for all of the humans to ask stupid questions. And I know there are no stupid questions, but yeah.
And good for you for having the situational awareness around that, right? Like that introspective, like being able to recognize in yourself, like, I'm getting better at this, by the way, but being able to recognize, like, now's not the time.
Yep.
Right. And we talked about radical candor a couple of months ago, I think, on this show. And one of the things that I've learned is, and kind of digs a little deeper into today's topic, which is, that discomfort. Like when I get in tab A, slot B, move the hell on mode, that comes off as, gruff or crass or whatever, right? And it makes everybody else uncomfortable, but they don't say anything. And then I have to have that situational awareness like yourself. Wait a minute. It's seventh period.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's me, not you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, situational awareness, at least in the introspective, and being able to look at yourself and recognize, where am I causing discomfort?
What is my role in this story that's happening? I've got one more story from the book, and I'll have everybody chat about this because it's already 12:45, which is crazy. On page 119, they talk about the fog of war as a term used to describe the atmosphere in war that promotes confusion and uncertainty. In your situational awareness, Tim did not even know what page I was going to read, but there's situational awareness, resulting in crippled decision-making and a lack of action. So I've got a little story with this. My daughter was in a car accident, so I get the phone call that nobody wants to get as a parent, right? With screaming child in my ear, like panic screaming. And I said, "Are you hurt?" And she quickly said, "No." I said, "Is anyone else hurt?" She said, "No." I was like, "Okay, then stop it." And later she would say to me, "I needed that because I couldn't get myself out of the panic." But when you're like, "Nope, it's okay," and now we're just going to get in problem solving mode, she could not problem solve at all, right? But then I could like tactics like, we're going to call the police, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And one other time she called with drama in the middle of the night. And later she would say, "I just needed you to say stop and let's problem solve." But she couldn't problem solve on her own. So situational awareness is a bit of that, knowing yourself. But as you think toward, like, when you lose that ability to make decisions and take action, what helps you move to do the next thing?
Yeah,
Right.
I think that I think it was on that same section that they introduced that term analysis paralysis, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
boy, yeah. I own that.
And yeah, and how humans are geared better with a reduced set of choices, let's say, like boiling it down. And I liked how it dealt with I know that I personally have uh, a weakness for the pursuit of perfection. People who make things I know I have that flaw, is that I want it to be perfect. It's never done. But like I think they mentioned that, like, if you're not, a little embarrassed by your first version of the thing, then
You
you
launched too
waited too
late.
long. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as someone told me, yeah, real artists ship. So the so yeah, that one in particular hit home for me, the harm of pursuing perfection, and trying to avoid that trap.
Oh, the analysis paralysis line I have said so many times, like, yeah, defeat the blank page. Tim, what you got on that one?
So I have lots of things. As you were kind of talking
But your
about,
situational awareness, be warned,
well,
it's 12:48.
no, as you were talking about, like, the daughter and the car accident and the thing, like the hierarchy of needs. Are you safe?
Yeah.
Are you not, like, are you okay?
Yep.
Okay, now stop.
Yeah.
Right. And I do that a lot. I do that a lot to myself. I do it to my family, and do it to my, like, and it drives them nuts because they're like, how are you able to remove the emotional aspect and just get to the tab A, slot B, get shit done, move on? And I don't know, maybe it's just the trait that I have personally, is to be able to to look at the situation, remove the emotional aspect from it, and literally look at tab A, slot B, what needs to happen, call the police, are you safe? Like, once you get beyond, okay, we're safe. And have that situational awareness. And it's probably the military trait, I don't know, but it's just something that I've kind of always been able to, like, separate, like, the react to what is actually real, what is actually
What are the facts?
things
What
that
do I
need to
know?
be-
Yeah.
right. What do I
That
need to do?
when you said that, that just reminded me, I walked into my room in college and there was a guy laying on the floor in a puddle of blood with a slit on his forehead. He had jumped into our door frame and my roommates were like,
Yeah.
and I was like, hold on. You conscious? Yes. Have you called the police? Like I suddenly got very tactical when I knew that like, okay, he's not bleeding out on the floor. Anyway, so Scott, how about you when things are emotional, right? You're in the fog of not war, but day to day, which sometimes feels like it, right? What does it take for you to get out of that into a decision-making mode and be productive instead of the analysis paralysis?
I have a weird thing. I go right into action. That's always been how I've dealt with it. From a very early age, like it was just a weird thing in me. And what I found though is there's interesting times where it becomes potentially paralyzing is it's a situation where there isn't it's not a venue where you can act immediately,
Yeah.
right? It's more
Yep.
of a soft venue. So then all my systems are charging up for action, right?
Nothing.
Everything turns on
Yeah.
and I'm like ready to go. So it's literally, I've learned it takes, so I've had to learn about it and study it. It takes blood away from the part of your brain that does all the
Oh,
problem
interesting.
solving. And you have to bring yourself down and really focus. So what I've learned to do now, if one of those situations does arise, it's not every situation, but if something triggers me
Yeah.
and I'm getting hyped up and I want to take action and I'll have to wait, focus in on my intention, focus on how I want to show up, which is going to be aligned with my values. And that detaching from the situation, which is something they do talk about in the book. You have to be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
I don't think they don't use the detach, or do they? It was on one of my pages. It's slightly different wording than detach, but it's that strategic pause, I think is the word they use. Like stepping back has really been the thing for me to help me think about things more from the standpoint of what are we actually facing
Yep.
versus how am I feeling about what we're facing.
Yeah. That is, again, that reminds me of when my daughter will call and be like, I need you to put me back in that situation. But how many times in the MSP world do we hear of people fussing because they know they're working in the business when they need to work on the business and like step out? So this is a prime situation where we're talking about people drowning in jeeps turned upside down in the water in Afghanistan or Iran, right? And it's the same.
Iraq.
Iraq, thank you. I
Yeah.
couldn't remember where we were. And it's the same process that we
Yeah.
need when we are busy, busy, busy all the time and need to take a step back to strategically think about, how can we reset and rethink differently? So that is what I think is fascinating about the book, because may none of us ever have situations like what is in the book, but can we all learn from that and how it applies to leadership lessons in everyday life?
Achieve locus of control. I found it. Achieve
Yes,
locus of
locus
control.
of control. Yeah, that's probably a mantra more than one of us could stand to like, home.
I don't think I've ever heard that phrase before. I'm gonna have to go Google that, GPT
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'd like everybody to just kind of wrap up with a statement based on this. So Mission 60 is Jason's company, and their happiness comes from serving other people. So aligned to core values, right, is they recognize that happiness is not off, having fun in the sun. Their mission, they know that they as a company are happiest when they're serving other people. So either for you personally, what are you happiest doing, or for your company, like the core value of, you kind of all said it at the beginning when you said we help people do this, but when is your company the happiest, or when is an MSP the happiest, if you're not talking about your company? Any takers?
I can go
Okay.
because I've got ours is one that I'm proudly, it's corny, like our mission
Like
is to help.
that is your job to help people define theirs. So I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, we're on a mission to help the world be its inspired best, and like I feel that passionately. the way we focus on it is we help business owners, leaders, and CEOs, because that's the group that has the biggest influence. And it's a group that, know intimately, but also have seen the effect that we all can have.
Yeah.
So that's massive to us. And when you get to ambiguities or a decision has to be made, that informs what we do. And then you use the core values to become the guardrails,
Yeah.
of how we make those decisions.
So if you're not familiar with Scott's software, it's result maps. But part of Scott's getting folks to define their vision and get clarity. He has a great vision setting activity, which we actually have done, and asking great questions. So if you are struggling to answer that question, you should just go stalk Scott, because it really is.
Yeah, we can, like, it's a free trial, and we actually now have it in a AI vision builder. It's 16 simple
And the
questions.
vision builder, that in and of itself is
We're
worth
doing the
hopping
same
in.
thing for core values. So
Yeah.
like for 14 days, you go in and play,
Yeah,
even if you're not going to buy, and you want to get like, and it's legit stuff. We're not like, hey,
nope,
what does
it's cool.
ChatGPT say? We've got a database of hundreds of these things. We've done a lot of it. So yeah, it's
it's
powerful
cool.
to have.
Yeah.
Thank you for that though. Yes.
Oh, no, I'm a fan. Chris?
Yeah, I guess from a company standpoint, from the work we do, we're happiest with removing the robotic parts of the job from our customers. Taking those tedious, repetitive tasks that nobody enjoys, and seeing our customers freed up from that.
And say, so you're freeing them up to they're happy.
Yes, yeah, I guess that is our happy is making their happy, which I know is a little, it may be a little rote, trite, but that is taking those pieces out of their job that they're dreading on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
and just freeing them up to do what they do best.
Have you automated laundry folding yet?
It's on the roadmap. I think that's my answer for everything now.
That's on the roadmap, but we haven't done it yet. Nice. Tim, how about you to wrap up?
So, personally, I'm happy when my family's happy. I'm happy when the kids are doing well. My wife is not stressed. When, the dog doesn't knock the water dish over 1,000 times. I'm happy when my family's happy, right? But as a company, collectively, we're happy when the MSP and the light bulb goes on and it clicks like, oh my God, I can actually do this work. Oh my God, I can actually help the small business in this work.
In there.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that feel. I love like sitting here and I'm on the Zoom and I'm listening. And when that light bulb goes on and their eyeballs go, it just, all right, my job is done here.
The job here is done here. Yeah. Now it's down to brass tacks type of thing. That's awesome. I would say Nick and I've done a lot of podcasts recently around helping folks become the best version of themselves, right? Ted Lasso style. But I am super happy when I can connect folks with something that will help them do the next thing, right? I really do end up with a LinkedIn full of people reaching out saying, hey, I'm looking to do this. Do you have any ideas on how to get there? And I'm delighted when I can be helpful with that. So I'll put that plug in should anybody want to land in my LinkedIn box. I'm happy to chat. Well, thank you all for joining us. And again, for folks that were listening, we read Deliberate Discomfort by Jason B.A. Van Camp. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and hopefully all of the magic of Phil in the background can get this link to be where it needs to be. Ooh, can't double click today, apparently. There we go. We are going to read Bring Yourself by Maury Taherapur. I hope I got that right. If anybody knows Maury, I would love to see if she wants to join the call. This was recommended by an MSP. The subtitle is How to Harness the Power of Connection to negotiate fearlessly. So I think MSPs speak a lot about building relationships in order to work through sales. So to be able to use the strength that is relationships to do the hard part of negotiation, I think is interesting. I've not read it yet. I'm buying it now. So I hope you all will join me for that one. And thanks.
Thank you.
Right on. Cheers,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.